June 19, 1943. Rabaul, New Britain. The morning sun blazes through a haze of salt and diesel smoke. The airfield hums with the familiar rhythm of war engines revving, mechanics shouting, metal tools clanging against aluminum. Rows of Mitsubishi A6M Zero fighters shimmer in the heat like coiled serpents ready to strike. Inside a tin-roofed command shack, Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's most feared aces, leans over a reconnaissance photo pinned to a board. A dark, unfamiliar silhouette dominates the grainy image: thick fuselage, wide wings, blunt nose. Sakai studies it silently. Around him, younger pilots laugh. Another fat American pig, one of them scoffs, smirking. They'll never build a plane that can turn with us. The others join in, echoing the same confidence that had carried them from Pearl Harbor to the Coral Sea. For 3 years, the Zero had ruled the skies. To the Japanese, air combat was not just war, it was art. And the Zero, with its light frame and graceful agility, was its brushstroke. But Sakai isn't laughing. He traces the outline of the new aircraft with a calloused finger. "Be careful," he says quietly. "Heavy can mean strong." Thousands of miles away, aboard the USS Essex, a brand new carrier slicing through the Pacific, the atmosphere couldn't be more different. Below deck, mechanics in grease-stained uniforms swarm over a new fighter, the Grumman F6F Hellcat. Its midnight blue skin gleams under the deck lights. Its enormous Pratt & Whitney R-2800 engine rumbles like a restrained beast. On the flight deck, Lieutenant J.G. Alex Vreeshu, a young pilot from Indiana, climbs into the cockpit. The canopy slides shut with a metallic click. His heart pounds. He has heard the stories how the Japanese Zero could twist and roll like a ghost in the air. But this machine feels like a fortress with wings. Over the headset, the deck officer's voice cuts through the roar of propellers. "All right, boys. Let us show the rising sun what Grumman built." The catapult launches. The Hellcat surges forward, engines screaming. The ocean falls away beneath him. At 20,000 feet, he sees them glinting specks approaching from the east. Zeros. Sleek, silver, dancing in formation. The radio crackles, enemy sighted. Coming in fast. Vreeshu's pulse quickens. The Hellcats break formation and dive. Tracer rounds slash across the sky. The air fills with fire and smoke. A Zero loops above him, its pilot confident, trying to draw the heavy American into a turning fight. But the Hellcat isn't playing by those rules. Vreeshu yanks the throttle forward, dives into a steep roll, and opens fire. The 6 Browning .50 caliber machine guns roar as one. The Zero explodes in a burst of orange flame, spinning toward the sea. "Splash 1, he shouts into the radio, adrenaline surging. Minutes later, the fight is over. The Americans lose 1 plane. The Japanese, 7. In Rabaul that evening, a courier delivers the combat report. Sakai reads it in silence. Around him, the others shake their heads, laughing it off. But Sakai feels a chill. He stares again at that photograph of the fat American fighter. "Maybe," he murmurs, "it wasn't so heavy after all." July 1942. Bethpage, New York. The thunder of hammers and a whine of drills fill the vast hangars of the Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation. Engineers and draftsmen work shoulder to shoulder beneath hanging lamps, their blueprints spread across oil-stained tables. The smell of steel, rubber, and cigarette smoke clings to the air. At the center of the room stands Leroy Grumman, a stocky man in rolled-up sleeves, his eyes locked on a model airplane propped on the table. "Weary losing too many boys," he mutters. "The Wildcat's done all it can." His chief engineer, Bill Schwendler, flips through a folder of test data. Sir, the Navy wants something that can dive faster, climb harder, outgun anything Japan has. Grumman points to the engine mount. Then we start here. The Pratt & Whitney are 2800 double wasp. 2000 horsepower. The biggest damn engine we can fit. An engineer protests. That LL make her too heavy. The pilots want to be able to turn with the Zero. Grumman slams his palm against the table. The echo silences the room. They don't need to turn with the Zero. They need to survive it. He jabs a finger at the design. Armor plate here. Self-sealing fuel tanks. Bulletproof glass. Give it 6 Brownings in the wings. And make it tough enough to come home with holes in her belly. There's a pause, then the team nods. The order is clear. Within weeks, the prototype F6F takes shape, thick, powerful, and unapologetically ugly. A flying anvil compared to the Zero's elegant lines. Mechanics start calling it Grumman's Iron Works Cat. On a clear August morning, test pilot Robert Hall climbs into the cockpit at Calverton Airfield. Ground crew wave him forward. The propeller spins to life, chopping the air into a deafening roar. The double wasp engine trembles with raw strength, vibrating through the hangar walls. Hall throttles up and takes off. The Hellcat surges into the sky, climbing like a beast unleashed. At 10,000 feet, he rolls, dives, and pushes it to its limits. When he lands, the engineers swarm the plane. Well? Grumman asks. Hall wipes the sweat from his brow, a grin spreading across his face. She's not graceful, he says, but she's a killer. The Navy doesn't hesitate. Within hours, an urgent telegram flashes from Washington. Approved for production priority 1. By December, the factory runs 24 hours a day. Women riveters, teenage apprentices, and veterans missing limbs from earlier wars work side by side. Steel shipments pour in by train. The walls shake as the first production Hellcats roll off the line. Leroy Grumman walks the floor at night, stopping beside each new fuselage as if greeting a newborn child. He runs a hand along the smooth metal. "ULL keep them alive," he whispers. Each week, another squadron of pilots arrives in California to train on the new machine. Some are skeptical. Some are scared. But the first time they gun the throttle, they all feel it: the sheer power, the stability, the sense that this plane can take punishment and hit back twice as hard. In Washington, Navy brass study the first test results. The Hellcat outclimbs, outdives, and outshoots the Zero in nearly every category. And for the first time since Pearl Harbor, optimism returns to American skies. On the other side of the Pacific, Japan's intelligence officers intercept the designation F6F. One officer smirks. "A new American toy," he says dismissively. "It won't matter. But it will matter. It will change everything." September 1, 1943. Pacific Ocean. USS Yorktown, CV-10. The ocean is calm, unnervingly calm, as the first light of dawn paints the waves in molten gold. The crew moves like clockwork across the flight deck, pushing and fueling dark blue fighters marked with white stars. The scent of high-octane fuel and saltwater hangs thick in the air. "Check your flaps." Radios, a deck officer yells over the howl of engines. Below deck, pilots crowd around a chalkboard map showing a small speck in the endless blue, Marcus Island, 1,000 miles from Tokyo. A fortified Japanese base. The briefing officer's voice is steady. "Gentlemen, this is the Hellcat's baptism. The Navy wants to see what your new ride can really do. Lieutenant Richard Zeke Cormier buttons his flight jacket, eyes fixed on the map. It's his first combat mission in the F6F. Around him, the pilots grin nervously. "Just another milk run," one jokes. Cormier doesn't smile. He knows it won't be. Moments later, the deck explodes with motion. Propellers scream. The first Hellcat rolls forward into the morning wind, the carrier pitching gently beneath it. One by one, the fighters leap into the air. 20 Hellcats against the rising sun. At 15,000 feet, Marcus Island appears ahead, a ring of sand and jungle around a blackened airstrip. Plumes of anti-aircraft fire bloom in the distance. Then, the radio crackles. Bandits. 11 o'clock high. They re-coming. The sky fills with silver Mitsubishi Zeros, diving in formation, sunlight flashing off their wings. Cormier tightens his grip on the stick. Let us see what this fat cat can do. The battle erupts in an instant. The Zero pilots move with breathtaking precision, looping and rolling in tight spirals. They faster in the turn, just as the intelligence reports warned. But the Hellcat pilots have orders drilled into their skulls: daunty dogfight. Dive. Climb. Hit hard. Cormier dives steeply, the G-forces crushing his chest. A Zero flashes past below him. He flips the Hellcat onto its back, pulls up, and fires a burst from his 6.50 caliber Browning M2S. The tracer stream connects. The Zero blossoms into flame. Splash one, he shouts. To his right, another Hellcat takes a hit, smoke trailing, but it doesn't go down. The pilot holds steady, lines up a shot, and cuts a second Zero in half with gunfire. Minutes stretch into eternity. The air becomes a chaotic ballet of smoke trails, spinning wreckage, and glinting metal. By the time the last Zero disengages, the sky above Marcus Island is empty except for Hellcats circling victoriously. Cormier looks down at the damage readout. A few bullet holes, nothing more. He laughs, half relief, half disbelief. The radio comes alive. All planes, form up. Let us go home. As they land back aboard the Yorktown, the deck crew erupts into cheers. They count the score: 5 Zeros destroyed. Not a single Hellcat lost. That night, in the ready room, the pilots toast with tin mugs of coffee. The laughter is loud, raw, alive. In Rabaul, the first reports reach Japanese command. Officers read them in silence. The words are brief, clinical. Enemy fighter very strong. Cannot turn well, but climbs fast. Withstands heavy fire. In the margins, one commander scrawls a note. This may be the replacement for the Wildcat. If true, our situation will worsen. Outside, the rain begins to fall. The once invincible Zero has met its match, though no one yet understands how completely that match will end its reign. November 11, 1943. Rabaul, New Britain. The sky over Simpson Harbor burns with anti-aircraft fire. Black puffs blossom like ink stains, drifting among the clouds. Below, the Japanese fortress of Rabaul, once called the Gibraltar of the Pacific, lies bristling with guns, airfields, and thousands of men waiting for an attack that has finally arrived. From the carrier USS Essex, a wave of F6F Hellcats roars toward the coast, their wings gleaming in the morning sun. Inside one cockpit, Lieutenant Commander Butch O'Hare, America's first Navy ace and Medal of Honor recipient, tightens his harness and glances at his wingmen. Stay sharp. They'll come for us fast, he says into the radio. O'Hare knows this mission is suicide for anyone who underestimates the enemy. The Japanese 11th Air Fleet has been stationed here for months, veteran Zero and Tony pilots with thousands of hours of experience. But this time, the Americans aren't flying Wildcats. They're flying Hellcats, and the Japanese are about to find out what that means. The first Zeros appear above the clouds like silver daggers, dropping in pairs. O'Hare banks hard left, pulling the Hellcat into a climbing roll. The engine's roar is deep, menacing, a sound that shakes the cockpit. A Zero crosses his sights. O'Hare squeezes the trigger. 6 Browning machine guns thunder in unison, their tracers arcing across the sky. The Japanese fighter disintegrates in a shower of metal. Splash 1, O'Hare yells. But there's no time to celebrate. 2 Zeros dive at him from above. He pulls into a vertical climb, the G-forces pressing him into his seat. The Zeros try to follow and stall out. The Hellcat rockets upward, flips over, and drops back down like a hammer. One burst. Another Zero gone. Below, the sky is chaos. Zeros dart and twist like swarming wasps, trying to pull the heavy Hellcats into turning fights. But the Americans refuse to play that game. They dive, fire, and climb using altitude and firepower, not agility, to kill. In the span of 20 minutes, the air battle turns one-sided. 50 Japanese planes destroyed. 5 Hellcats lost. On the deck of the Essex, mechanics wipe blood and oil from the wings of returning aircraft. O'Hare climbs out of his cockpit, sweat streaking his face, and stares at the horizon where Rabaul still smokes in the distance. He knows what this means. The myth of Japanese air superiority, the legend of the Zero, has just been shattered over the Solomon Sea. That night, aboard the carrier, a young pilot named Ensign Frank McCampbell, not yet a legend, sits at the mess table, quietly listening as veterans trade stories about Rabaul. He says nothing, just takes notes in a small leather notebook. In 2 years, that same young man will become America's top Navy ace, and he'll do it all in the Hellcat. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the news hits like a thunderclap. Reports of the defeat at Rabaul spread through the Air Ministry. The once invincible Zero, it seems, is dying faster than anyone expected. We underestimated them, one senior officer admits. We thought the Americans built only heavy machines. But this Hellcat, it fights like a demon. Outside the war room, a young pilot trainee overhears the conversation. He looks down at his hands, thin, uncalloused, and wonders how long before he is sent into the sky to face that demon himself. June 19, 1944. The Philippine Sea. Dawn breaks over a calm, endless ocean. On the deck of the USS Lexington, rows of F6F Hellcats gleam in the golden light, their blue-gray fuselages lined like a wall of steel. Mechanics shout over the roar of engines, arming belts of .50 caliber rounds and checking fuel lines. This is the day that will decide the air war in the Pacific, the day history will call the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. At 8:30, radar operators aboard Task Force 58 pick up something massive. Bogies. Bearing 320, range 150 miles. Looks like a full strike coming in. The Japanese have committed nearly 400 aircraft, the last large force from their once dominant carrier fleet. Their goal, smash the American invasion fleet near Saipan. On the flight deck, Lieutenant Commander David McCampbell straps into his Hellcat, his call sign Mincy 1 painted beneath the canopy. He checks his gauges and whispers, "Let us make this count." Moments later, the carrier's catapult hurls him into the air. 9:45 a.m. 20,000 feet above the Philippine Sea. The horizon flickers with sunlight glinting off hundreds of tiny silver specks, Japanese Zeros, Judas, and Vals. McCampbell's voice crackles over the radio. "They're coming in waves. Tighten up, boys." The Hellcats dive from the sun. The first pass is merciless, guns blazing, tracers streaking through the morning sky. Japanese bombers burst into flames before they can reach the fleet. The air smells of burning oil and cordite. In less than 10 minutes, the sky turns into a slaughterhouse. Zeros twist and climb desperately, but the Hellcats' superior speed and firepower tear through their formations. Each burst from McCampbell's guns cuts down another target. Scratch 1. Splash 2 more. God almighty, they're everywhere. By noon, the outcome is clear. The Hellcats have destroyed 346 Japanese aircraft in a single day, one of the most lopsided victories in aerial warfare. On the decks below, sailors cheer as burning Japanese bombers crash into the sea. McCampbell lands back aboard the Lexington, his guns nearly empty. His aircraft is peppered with bullet holes, but he is unharmed. "How did it go, sir?" a deckhand asks. McCampbell smiles faintly. "They ran out of planes before we ran out of ammo." That night, as the carriers steam west under a blanket of stars, the surviving Japanese pilots limp back toward Guam and Tinian. Their voices are hollow over the radio. "We are out of fuel. I see no more comrades. They came from everywhere. Blue demons." By the next morning, Japan's carrier air arm, once the terror of the Pacific, has ceased to exist. The Imperial Navy will never again mount an offensive strike. The Americans have paid a small price: a few aircraft lost, a handful of pilots gone. But the psychological shift is immense. For the first time, Japan's elite airmen realize they are fighting not men, but an industrial machine, one that can outbuild, outfly, and outfight them on every front. Back on the Lexington, McCampbell looks out over the black water. His logbook shows 7 confirmed kills that day. He closes it, wipes the sweat from his hands, and says quietly, "This is just the beginning." July 1944, Truk Lagoon, Caroline Islands. Night cloaks the shattered Japanese stronghold once called the Gibraltar of the Pacific. Fires flicker across the lagoon as what remains of the Imperial Navy hides beneath camouflaged nets and crumbling hangars. From above, the soft hum of radial engines breaks the stillness. The Hellcats have returned. In the glow of tracer fire, Lieutenant J.G. Alex Vrashu, one of the Navy's fastest rising aces, banks his F6F through the flak-filled sky. Below him, explosions ripple through a sea of anchored wrecks, the skeletons of cruisers, destroyers, and supply ships. He lines up on a Ki-61 fighter attempting to scramble from a battered runway. "Too late, pal," Vrashu mutters. He squeezes the trigger. 6.50 caliber Brownings roar to life, spitting 70 rounds per second. The Japanese plane disintegrates before it leaves the ground. By the summer of 1944, the air war has shifted irrevocably. The once vaunted Japanese Naval Air Service is collapsing under the relentless pressure of the American machine. 3 years earlier, their pilots were the best in the world, veterans of China, Malaya, and Pearl Harbor. But now, the cream of that generation lies buried beneath the waves of the Coral Sea and Midway. The replacements? Barely trained boys, some with less than 40 flight hours before combat. They climb into Zeros that lack armor, self-sealing tanks, or even radios that work properly. At Atsugi Air Base, near Tokyo, instructor Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's surviving aces, looks out at a class of nervous trainees. He knows what awaits them. "These are not pilots," he tells a fellow officer quietly. "They are offerings." Meanwhile, on the other side of the ocean, American production lines thunder day and night. In Bethpage, Long Island, the Grumman plant is a blur of sparks and rivets. Women in overalls and goggles move in unison, fitting wings and bolting engines. Every 63 minutes, a brand new F6F Hellcat rolls out of the factory doors. Henry Hank Schwendler, Grumman's chief engineer, watches proudly as a completed fighter takes its first test flight. The pilot lifts off effortlessly. "That one's going straight to the Pacific," Schwendler says. "And it'll bring a few boys home." By the time the Marianas campaign ends, more than 12,000 Hellcats have been produced, each one stronger, faster, and deadlier than the last. In contrast, Japan's factories lie in ruins. The Mitsubishi plants in Nagoya have been firebombed. Aluminum is scarce. Fuel is almost gone. The few Zeros that do roll off the line arrive without guns, paint, or trained pilots. The balance of power in the Pacific sky is no longer measured in courage, it is measured in numbers. During the carrier strikes on Truk, Tinian, and Iwo Jima, Hellcat pilots claim hundreds of victories. But it is not the numbers that haunt them, it is the faces of their opponents. Vrashu remembers shooting down 6 enemy planes in 8 minutes. Later, as he looks over gun camera footage, he whispers, "They never even fired back." By autumn, the Japanese have turned to desperation. New recruits are told to memorize target silhouettes because they can no longer afford flight time. Others are trained only for one-way missions. The word kamikaze begins to circulate in the briefing rooms. Saburo Sakai, disgusted, confronts his superiors. This is not the way of Bushido. This is madness. But even Sakai knows the Empire's skies are lost. At dusk over the Philippine Sea, Hellcats patrol in silence. The sun sinks behind a horizon littered with smoke. For the first time in 3 years, American pilots own the night. October 25, 1944, Leyte Gulf, Philippines. The dawn explodes with light. The USS Princeton burns in the distance, smoke coiling into the sky as waves of aircraft scream overhead. The Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval engagement in history, is raging. High above the chaos, Commander David McCampbell leads a division of Hellcats from Air Group 15 aboard the USS Essex. His call sign echoes over the radio. Mincy 1, airborne. Below him, the Japanese fleet throws everything it has left into one last desperate gamble, Operation Shogo. Carriers, cruisers, and battleships surge toward the invasion beaches, hoping to drive the Americans from the Philippines. And this time, something new is in the air, something darker. At 7,000 feet, McCampbell spots the first wave, over 60 Japanese aircraft, Zeros, Judas, and Oscars inbound. They uncoordinated, ragged, and slow. Yet one by one, they begin diving straight toward American ships without pulling up. "Jesus," McCampbell mutters. They not trying to fight, they trying to die. The first kamikaze slams into the USS St. Lo, exploding in a burst of fire and metal. The carrier vanishes in minutes, taking 113 men with her. It is a new kind of warfare, the ultimate sign that Japan's Air Force is no longer a fighting force, but a weapon of despair. As the day unfolds, McCampbell and his wingman Ensign Roy Rushing climb to 37,000 feet to intercept a massive incoming formation. The air is thin and biting cold, their gauges flicker red. "Let us go to work," McCampbell says calmly. They dive into the enemy formation, firing short, controlled bursts. Within minutes, 2 planes fall. Then 4. Then 8. By the time McCampbell lands back on the Essex, he has downed 9 enemy aircraft in a single sortie, the record for any U.S. Navy pilot. When he steps onto the deck, sweat streaking through soot on his face, the crew erupts in cheers. But McCampbell doesn't celebrate. He stares silently at the horizon, watching the smoke rise from what remains of the St. Lo. "This isn't victory," he says quietly. "This is the end of something." In Tokyo, the news of Leyte Gulf hits like a thunderclap. Admiral Somu Toyota, head of the combined fleet, addresses his staff. "We have no more ships. No more pilots. No more fuel. The only weapon left is the spirit of our youth." Within weeks, kamikaze units are formalized Takotai, the Special Attack Corps. Hundreds of teenage pilots are sent on one-way missions with little more than a few hours of flight time and a letter to their mothers. But the Hellcats are waiting. Every time a kamikaze group forms up, they are intercepted, shredded before reaching their targets. The skies over the Philippines become a daily massacre. The F6Fs sweep through with cold efficiency, their 6 guns cutting through fragile Zeros like paper. "They came at us in flames," one Hellcat pilot later recalled. "You stopped feeling sorry after a while. You just prayed they missed your ship. By December 1944, the balance is absolute. The Imperial Navy is crippled, its carriers sunk, its airfields burning. American Hellcats now fly patrols over Japanese-held islands uncontested. In one after-action report, a Navy intelligence officer writes bluntly, "Japan's air war is finished. Their finest pilots are dead. Their replacements are barely able to fly. The Hellcat owns the Pacific. For every American pilot lost, 19 Japanese go down, a ratio unseen in the history of aerial combat. But beneath the triumph lies a grim truth. Both sides know that the next battles Iwo Jima, Okinawa will be fought with no mercy, no surrender, and no limits. And the skies will remain hell." March 18, 1945, off the coast of Kyushu, Japan. A cold gray dawn spreads over the carrier decks of Task Force 58. The smell of salt, oil, and exhaust clings to everything. On board the USS Bunker Hill, dozens of F6F Hellcats wait in perfect rows, their wings folded like the claws of sleeping predators. The pilots stand beside them in silence. For the first time, they are flying not over distant islands, but over the Japanese homeland itself. The war that began at Pearl Harbor is coming full circle. At 0600 hours, the first wave launches. The Hellcats roar into the air, followed by Avengers and Corsairs. The target, Kagoshima Airfield, one of Japan's last operational fighter bases. Lieutenant Fred Staub, 24 years old, a farm boy from Iowa, checks his oxygen mask and levels off at 12,000 feet. Below him, the entire island glows red from fires started by overnight raids. Suddenly, radar picks up movement. Over 20 enemy contact Zeros and Key 84 Franks scramble to intercept. The Japanese pilots are brave but hopelessly outmatched. Their aircraft sputter from bad fuel. Many carry no radios. Staub rolls into a dive, guns blazing. "Splash 1, he shouts into his mic. 2 more on my tail brake right." The sky becomes a spinning storm of tracers and smoke. But the Hellcats are faster, heavier, unrelenting. Within 10 minutes, the air battle is over. 17 enemy planes destroyed. 2 Hellcats lost. Back at Kagoshima, surviving Japanese ground crews drag wounded pilots from burning wrecks. One officer, watching the chaos, murmurs, "So this is what it feels like to be the hunted." That night, Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's last living aces, writes in his diary, "The men who fly now are children. Their courage is pure, but their deaths are meaningless. The Americans come like steel waves. No one can stop them." April 7, 1945, East China Sea. News spreads across the U.S. fleet. The Yamato, pride of the Imperial Navy, has sailed for a final suicide mission toward Okinawa. Hellcats from the USS Essex and USS Bunker Hill scramble to intercept. As they climb through clouds, the massive battleship comes into view below, an armored Titan slicing through dark waves, anti-aircraft guns blazing. From 10,000 feet, the Hellcats dive in coordinated pairs, covering Avengers and Helldivers as they drop torpedoes. The air is filled with shrapnel and thunder. Tracer fire lashes past. One Hellcat explodes in a burst of orange. Another streaks across the Yamato's deck, strafing gun crews before pulling up inches above the sea. Within minutes, the sky becomes a storm of flame. The Yamato lists to port, her magazines detonating in a blinding white flash. The shockwave rattles the cockpits miles away. Then silence. Target neutralized, comes the calm voice of a Navy controller. It is the symbolic death of Japan's war machine, and the Hellcats were there to witness it. In the months that follow, Hellcats fly endless sorties over Okinawa, then the Japanese mainland. They fight kamikazes daily, sometimes dozens in a single afternoon. Pilots return with bloodshot eyes and shaking hands. By June, the statistics are staggering: 5,223 enemy aircraft destroyed, for just 270 Hellcats lost in air combat. The numbers don't tell the whole story. Every pilot knows what they mean: the end of the samurai in the sky. August 15, 1945, USS Lexington, anchored near Okinawa. The war is over. Emperor Hirohito's surrender echoes over the ship's loudspeakers. David McCampbell stands on the flight deck, watching a pair of Hellcats circle one last time before landing. Their engines whine softly as they taxi to a stop. He takes off his flight helmet and sets it on the wing. The Pacific wind whips through his hair. "That's it," he says quietly. "The sky is ours and we paid for every inch of it." As the sun sets over the calm ocean, sailors line the rails in silence. The Hellcats, once ridiculed as clumsy and overweight, now rest beneath the fading light, symbols of a new era of air power. In the distance, smoke from Japan's ruined cities still rises into the heavens. The war that began with laughter ends in silence. And the world will never look at the sky the same way again.